Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, hope you all had a great weekend, and welcome back to Mingles with Jingles. It's been traditional lately for me to give you a quick health update, and well, basically it's all good news. Post-surgery, basically the wounds have almost completely healed up, and everything's more or less back to normal. I still get very tired very easily. I mean, lack of energy is a bit of a problem, but the good news just kept coming. I had a phone call from the hospital letting me know that, I mean, they were basically just confirming what everybody already knew. The thing that they'd removed from my gut was confirmed to have been cancer. I hadn't realised, but they'd also removed all of the lymph nodes around the cancer area and checked them out as well, just to confirm the results of the CT scan, and yep, no cancer there either. So it's the best possible news would have been you don't have cancer, you can go home. Sorry for wasting your time, thank you, come again soon. I mean, that would have been the best possible news. So this is the second best possible news that it could have been. Of course, they're going to have to screen me every year just in case it comes back. I think that will be happening for the next 5 years, I'm not sure. But hey, I mean, you know, I put it with 8 hours of stomach surgery, I can handle a 20-minute colonoscopy every year. That is no problem at all. Well anyway, moving on. In what could easily become a recurring segment in Mingles with Jingles, entitled Dumb Shit That Games Executives Said This Week. I just heard something that's even dumber than when Warner Brothers came out with, due to the massive underperformance and, well, basically outright failure of our live service game, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, we're shit-canning all of our single-player games and focusing just on live service games in the future. Yep, somebody actually said something even dumber than that, although I am taking it slightly out of context, purely for comedy reasons, but when you hear what it is, I think you'll agree that, yeah, it still counts. First, I should say that this is probably good news, and hopefully a trend, excuse me, and a sign of things to come. For those of us who have actually heard of the development studio or the game in question, and I don't fall into that category. So, developer Airship Syndicate has just announced the resurrection of its action RPG Wayfinder. Now, I've never heard of Airship Syndicate and I've never heard of Wayfinder. But the promising news here is that it's getting rid of all of the stuff that everybody hated the first time around, the whole always online live service shit. Because it was an always online game that had microtransactions and was free to play. Now, I don't have a problem with microtransactions in games that are free to play because, hey, they've got to earn a living somehow, but the game wasn't a success. And so they're bringing it back, but this time it will have an offline mode, there will be no microtransactions whatsoever, and it will have an upfront price tag of $25. So far, so not stupid. One other promising thing we've come out of all of this, by the way, I mean, they appear to be bucking the trend in more ways than one here, is that the game was originally published by Digital Extremes, who were the developers of Warframe. But when Digital Extremes decided they were going to get out of the whole publishing thing, rather than doing what all the big publishers have been doing lately, and just delisting the games and preventing anybody from playing them, they gave full control back to the development studio and said, here, this is your problem, you take care of it. Which is why Airship Syndicate have been able to bring the game back, put it offline rather than requiring an online always connection, removing all the microtransactions and just charging a straight up $25 purchase fee. The thing is, the developers haven't just brought the game back to life, removed the online only feature and ditched all the microtransactions. They're relaunching it with a whole bunch of new stuff, an entire new expansion. There's a new continent you can play on, a new playable character, new missions, randomized weapon drops, collectible armor sets with unique stats, streamlined... This is starting to sound like an advert, isn't it? But there's a whole bunch of stuff, all of which can be earned in-game, no microtransactions. Some of the game systems have been reworked to reflect this. I mean, I've never heard of the game, I don't actually care about it, but this is undeniably a step in the right direction. So far, so good. Where's the stupid? Don't worry, the stupid's coming. The developer's CEO said, we're in uncharted territory and this is a big risk. To our knowledge, this hasn't been done before. Yes, it has. All games used to be like this. That's what games used to be. You didn't have to have an always-on connection to play them. You paid an upfront price and there were no microtransactions. This is not new. I realise it feels new, but all games used to be this way. Admittedly, I'm quoting him slightly out of context here. He was talking about taking an always-online, chock-full of microtransaction, free-to-play game and turning it into a not always online, although there is an online co-op mode, stripping out all the microtransactions and just charging a one-time only purchase fee. So yeah, I don't think anybody's ever done that before. Stand by to be corrected in the comments if they have. But still, I mean, he's not exactly breaking new ground here, is he? Nobody's going to be putting this guy up for CEO of the year with his revolutionary new business model anytime soon. That's all I'm saying. It's all been done before. I mean, I wish them the best of luck. I think they're doing a good thing here, but I've never heard of their game. I don't care about their game. I hope it succeeds. It sounds like it deserves to. But let's not get carried away and get too excited. Nobody's doing anything new here. I've got to admit, I did have to think twice before awarding the dumb shit that games executives have said this week to, I can't even remember the Airship Syndicate? Yes, the guys who did Wayfinder. Yeah, whatever. Because Microsoft put in some stiff competition for the title this week too. So, in the very same week that Microsoft announced they were shutting down 4 game studios, Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog Games and Roundhouse Games, they also announced the launch of a brand new studio called Elsewhere Entertainment, and I quote, exclusively focused on creating a new narrative-based and genre-defining AAA franchise, unquote. Technically, it isn't Microsoft opening the new studio, it's Activision, but Microsoft owns Activision, so in a very real sense you can say that Microsoft just announced the opening of a new development studio a week after they announced the closure of 4 others. Now, you could speculate that it's entirely possible that if Microsoft hadn't just blown $75 billion buying Activision in the first place, following a couple of years where sales of their Xbox barely managed to reach half the sales of the PlayStation 5 and had been seriously underperforming, then it's entirely possible that they might not have had to close a bunch of other studios in the first place. But hey, it is what it is. It's just that the timing and the wording of the announcement couldn't have been worse if they tried. I mean, they've shut down Arcane Austin. Let's not forget, Arcane Studios, right? The developers responsible for games like Dishonored, Prey, Wolfenstein Youngblood. The kind of titles that you could completely unironically say were narrative-based and genre-defining AAA franchises. And they've shut them down and opened up a new studio, and again I'm quoting, exclusively focused on creating narrative-based and genre-defining AAA franchises. You couldn't make this shit up if you tried. It's not all terrible news. I mean, things are looking kind of promising. The studio's based in Poland, and it's made up of, well, people who've worked on games like The Last of Us, Uncharted, The Witcher, Cyberpunk, Destiny, The Division, and Far Cry. So there's a reasonable expectation that this new studio is going to make some good stuff. One thing that it is confirmed they're not going to be making is Call of Duty. Activision are still going to be focusing on that in-house. This new studio, Elsewhere Entertainment, is going to be doing something new. In fact, there's some speculation that Microsoft might be adding future installments in the Call of Duty franchise to Microsoft Game Pass, which would be good news, I suppose, for gamers, because Game Pass has been massively underperforming as well. It's been consistently for the last couple of years. Funnily enough, for exactly the same amount of time that the latest Xbox console has been massively underperforming, take-up on Game Pass has been underperforming as well, mostly because nobody's buying the new Xbox, everybody's buying PlayStation 5s. So there is some speculation that in an attempt to just get that market foothold re-established, that you won't have to pay for future Call of Duty titles. They'll just be available on Xbox Game Pass. I mean, Microsoft have surely got to have some plan for making back the $75 billion they spent buying Activision, which, let's face it, was mostly so that they could control Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. Call of Duty is basically a license to print money. And so it wouldn't be surprising if they did add it to Game Pass. And World of Warcraft's been doing pretty well too. I mean, the last expansion, Shadowlands, was a bit of a disaster. But the new expansion, Dragonflight, has been, by all accounts, pretty successful. Although I don't play it, because, well, they've so radically changed the way the game plays. To me, it's just not even Warcraft anymore. But, well, the new classic expansion, Cataclysm, goes live today. Their Season of Discovery thing was a fairly big hit. And they recently did a sort of soft reboot and relaunch of the Mists of Pandaria expansion. So, for those of you who don't know what that was, back when Blizzard got permission... You see, Blizzard aren't allowed to actually run World of Warcraft in China. No foreign companies are allowed to run their own games in China. They have to do them through Chinese partners. So when Blizzard first got China's cock thoroughly and hopefully permanently wedged right tight up their arsehole, the next World of Warcraft expansion was naturally heavily Chinese influenced, the Mists of Pandaria. Unfortunately for Blizzard, the marriage was never going to last forever, despite Blizzard's best efforts to keep that Chinese cock wedged firmly up their arse, including such high-profile disasters as banning... Do you remember the whole Free Hong Kong thing? During a Hearthstone tournament, the guy that won shouted Free Hong Kong live on Twitch during his victory speech. So how did Blizzard react to this one? It's a mark of just how terrified Blizzard were that Chinese cock was going to be removed from their arses, that they not only banned the winner and kept his prize money, but they also fired the two presenters who just happened to be there at the time. I mean, they had nothing to do with it. They just happened to be the ones presenting the Twitch live stream when the guy blurted out Free Hong Kong. Yeah. Oh no, we can't lose that Chinese dollar. Quick, let's massively overreact. And then, of course, a couple of years later, they did lose that Chinese dollar. And Warcraft was pulled from sale in China. Well, it went back on sale in China. I'm not sure about the details of the whole deal, but it's back on sale. And of course, in order to celebrate the reinsertion of that Chinese cock up Blizzard's arse, they re-released the Mists of Pandaria, the heavily Chinese-focused expansion. But it has all been doing quite well. So profitable, in fact, that Blizzard Activision only had to fire 1,900 employees this year alone just to ensure that their executives and shareholders get to keep their dividends and stock options. All of which, by a sort of roundabout route, brings us to where we are this week. The week in which Microsoft shut down 4 studios, known for their narrative-driven, genre-defining game development, and also announced the opening of a new studio focused on narrative-driven and genre-defining game development. You couldn't make this shit up if you tried. Speaking of you couldn't make this shit up if you tried, I suppose we probably have to talk about the new Assassin's Creed game at some point. What's it called? Shadows? Because people are getting very upset about it. And I can kind of see why, and also kind of can't. So, what's gotten everybody all hot and bothered about Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is due for release at some point this year, and is set in feudal Japan? Well, it's to do with the 2 characters that you get to play. Now, I don't have any problem with one of them, because, I mean, I know a lot of other people do, but you get to play as a choice of, I think you actually get to play as both of them. And this is something of a break in tradition with Assassin's Creed games, because generally speaking, they've always allowed you to choose either a male or female protagonist. Well, not always, but in the last 10 years or so they have. But your choice of protagonist has always made sense. Like in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was set in ancient Greece. You got to play as either a male or female Greek, because it fits the setting and it makes sense. In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you got to play as either a male or female Viking, because it's a Viking game, so it made sense. And even in games where you didn't get the choice of protagonist, it always fit the setting. Ezio, for example, the Italian Assassin's Creed character in the Assassin's Creed games set in Renaissance Italy. I can't remember the name of the character, but the one from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Origins, which was set in Egypt, and you played as an Egyptian. Now, the 2 characters that you get to play as in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is set in feudal Japan, one of them's a female assassin. And this has upset some people, but I honestly don't really have a problem with this, because it does kind of fit the setting. There were female, particularly spies, and definitely assassins in feudal Japan. They were normally courtesans, not ninjas, which appears to be the case in this new Assassin's Creed game, but there were female spies and assassins. They were definitely a thing. So I don't really have a problem with this, not that much at all. And like I said, for the last decade at least, the Assassin's Creed games have always given you the option of playing either a male or female protagonist. It's the male protagonist that I do have some issues with. Now, I don't know the character's name, but he's a black man in feudal Japan. He's not even Japanese. Ah, but Jingles, there were black samurai in feudal... No, there weren't. This is my issue. There is an actual historical character who lived in feudal Japan and was in the service of one of the noble Japanese houses. I can't remember his name, but he was an African man. This is historical fact. But he was not a samurai. There's a really big difference. He was a family retainer, not a samurai. Now, the counter-argument is that this is all just semantics. It doesn't really matter whether he is or he isn't a samurai, because it's certainly not outside the realms of possibility to suggest that an African man employed as a retainer in a noble feudal Japanese family in combat would be wearing what looks like samurai armor and waving around what looks like samurai weapons, because that's the armor and the weapons that were available at the time. What else is he supposed to use and wear? And that's a good argument, but it does beg the question, why? If you're setting your game in feudal Japan, which I'm sure is going to be a very, very successful and anticipated setting for an Assassin's Creed game, I mean, I think it's basically about time they did, but if you're setting your game in feudal Japan, why can't we play as a feudal Japanese? You know, what's wrong with Japanese men? That I don't understand why you're drawing this particular line in the sand and choosing this particular hill to die on. It doesn't make sense. I mean, their only justification for this choice is some extremely sketchy and dubious historical precedent. But you know what there is not extremely sketchy and historical precedent for if you're setting your game in feudal Japan? Giving us the option of playing a feudal Japanese. I think this may be the first time, with the possible exception of Assassin's Creed Origins, where you actually get to play as a black man in an Assassin's Creed game. But why has it taken this long? And why in feudal Japan of all places? Well, the simple and realistic answer, of course, is that Ubisoft are doing the same thing that they did in Far Cry 6, and they're virtue signalling and proudly waving their diversity flag. You know, look at how progressive we are. Ooh, we're so cool. Ubisoft don't really give a shit about representation. If they did, we would have had an Assassin's Creed game set in Africa by now. Actually, I would play that. That would be really cool. Imagine Assassin's Creed set in southern Africa, where you get to play as a Zulu warrior during the area of British colonial expansion, fighting against the British Empire. That would be a really cool game. And it would make sense because it would fit the setting, instead of shoehorning a black man in at feudal fucking Japan. Just to be able to say, ooh, look how cool we are. I mean, when did we all suddenly start becoming ashamed of Japanese men? Why is that a bad thing? Oh, Ubisoft. They're never going to change. I mean, they are what they are. But I would absolutely play the shit out of an Assassin's Creed game where I got to play as a Zulu warrior assassinating British Empire officials. That would be really, really cool. But I'm confident that if Ubisoft ever did decide to make that game, they'd still find a way to screw it up somehow. Because the chances of you actually getting to play a black Zulu warrior in a game set in Zululand, fighting the British Empire in the 18th century, would be slightly less than zero, because it's a Ubisoft game, and if they ever did make that game, your only choice of protagonist as the aforementioned Zulu warrior would be a non-gender specific Chinese, because it's Ubisoft, and that's what they do, and you've got to get that Chinese dollar somehow. And on that horribly politically incorrect bombshell, which I guarantee has probably offended somebody somewhere, I can only say, tough shit, deal with it, take care, and I'll catch you next time.